Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
About 8 years ago, I was desperate for work. I've been unemployed for 3 months after my previous company downsized, and my savings were running dangerously low. When I finally landed a sales position at this mid-sized tech company, I was grateful just to have a paycheck coming in again. The job wasn't my dream career, but I figured I could learn the ropes and maybe even grow to like it. My first red flag should have been the training. They gave me half a day to learn their entire system. Half a day! I'm talking about a complex software platform with dozens of product lines, pricing tiers, and technical specifications. Most companies give new sales reps at least a week of proper training, but apparently this place believed in throwing people into the deep end and seeing who could swim. The only saving grace was my desk assignment. They placed me right next to Karen, who was supposedly one of their top performers. She'd been there for 5 years and consistently hit her quotas. The manager explained that sitting new hires next to experienced reps was their way of providing mentorship. I thought maybe I'd got a break. Boy, was I wrong. Karen made it clear from day one that she wasn't interested in helping anyone. She'd arrive at exactly 9, put on her headset, and start dialing. When I tried to introduce myself or ask basic questions about office procedures, she gave me these dismissive looks, like I was interrupting something incredibly important. The first few weeks were brutal. I was fumbling through calls, trying to figure out which products solved which problems, and constantly second-guessing myself on pricing. Meanwhile, Karen was closing deals left and right, speaking confidently about technical specifications and upselling customers like it was second nature. I started staying late, reading through product manuals and watching training videos that were buried deep in the company's internal website. I practiced my pitch in the mirror at home and write down common objections with potential responses. I was determined to succeed, even if I had to teach myself everything. Then came the day that changed everything. I was on a call with a potential client who seemed genuinely interested in our mid-tier software package. He was asking detailed questions about integration capabilities, and I was doing pretty well keeping up. Then he asked about a specific feature that I wasn't completely sure about. I knew we had something similar, but I didn't want to give him wrong information and lose credibility. Karen was right there, literally 3 feet away from me. I could see she wasn't on a call, just updating her customer relationship management system. I muted my phone and leaned over. I asked her a quick question about whether the premium package included automated backup scheduling. She didn't even look up from her screen when she told me it wasn't in her job description to help me. I stared at her for a second, thinking maybe she was joking, but her expression was completely serious. Here I was, asking a simple yes or no question that would have taken her 2 seconds to answer, and she couldn't be bothered. I pointed out that it would literally take her 1 second to answer. She repeated that training junior reps wasn't in her job description and told me to figure it out myself. I scrambled to find someone else who could help me. I saw another rep across the room finishing up a call, but by the time I caught his attention and got my answer, I heard the dreaded dial tone. My prospect had hung up. That sale would have been worth about $3,000 in commission. For someone making base salary and struggling to hit targets, that was devastating. I lasted another 2 months at that company before I finally quit. The environment was toxic, the training was non-existent, and people like Karen made it clear that you were on your own. I found a position at a smaller company with better culture and actual mentorship programs. Over the years, I worked my way up, consistently hit my numbers, and eventually became one of their senior sales representatives. Last week, our director announced we were hiring a new team member. When he said the name, I couldn't believe it. When she walked through the door for her first day, I nearly choked on my coffee. It was Karen. She recognized me immediately. I could see the surprise and maybe a hint of worry in her eyes when she realized where she'd ended up. Apparently, her previous company had gone through major layoffs, and she'd been job hunting for months before landing here. Our manager introduced her around, and in a twist of irony that felt like divine intervention, assigned her to the desk right next to mine. He explained our mentorship approach and how experienced reps help guide new team members. For the first few days, I was professional but distant. I answered her basic questions about office logistics and company policies, but I kept our interactions minimal. She seemed nervous, which was a stark contrast to the confident person I remembered from 8 years ago. This morning, she was struggling with a call. I could hear her fumbling through product specifications, clearly out of her element with our platform. When she hung up, she looked frustrated. She asked if I could help her with something. Her client had been asking about our enterprise security features, and she wasn't sure how to explain the encryption protocols. I looked up from my computer screen and smiled. The moment I'd been waiting for had finally arrived. I told her sorry, but it wasn't in my job description to help her. Recognition dawned immediately. She knew exactly what I was referencing. She reminded me that was years ago and asked if we could just move past it. I told her to figure it out herself. I turned back to my computer and continued working while she sat there speechless. A few minutes later, I heard her phone ring again. She picked up, tried to wing the answer about our security features, gave the client completely wrong information, and lost the sale. My boss will probably want to talk to me about this later. The company does expect senior reps to help train newcomers, and technically, I should have assisted her, but honestly, I don't care. Some lessons take years to come back around, and watching karma serve up justice was worth whatever conversation I might have to have with management. After 8 years, I finally got to return the exact same favor Karen had given me. I work as a delivery driver for a local pharmacy and live in a neighborhood with tree-lined streets and modest homes. Parking has always been a challenge here since most houses don't have driveways, so everyone parks on the street. It's first come, first served, and most people are understanding about it. I'm in and out of my car all day, so sometimes I get home late and have to park a few houses down from mine. It's never been a big deal, just part of city living. The house directly across from mine is owned by a woman who became a problem from day one. She's probably in her 60s, always wearing a bathrobe when she comes outside, and has a permanent scowl on her face. She made it clear that she considered the street in front of her house to be her personal parking spot. It started with dirty looks when people parked there. Then she escalated to leaving passive-aggressive notes on windshields. The notes said things like, "This is inconsiderate and find somewhere else to park." I saw her put one on my coworker's car when he dropped me off, after my car was in the shop. When the notes didn't work, she started confronting people directly. I witnessed her walk up to a young mom who was visiting the family next door. She demanded that the woman move her car immediately because it was parked in front of her house. The young mom politely explained that she was sorry but asked if it was Karen's driveway. Karen angrily told her no but said it was in front of her house and demanded she move it immediately. The young mom calmly pointed out that this was a public street and she was just visiting her friend for an hour. Karen didn't care and threatened to have the car towed. The young mom just shook her head and walked away. I felt bad for her, but what could I do? It was clear this woman was unhinged. Over the next few months, these confrontations became daily occurrences. She yelled at the mailman, screamed at a food delivery guy, and even called the police on a family having a birthday party because their guests parked near her house. The cops came, took one look at the situation, and basically told her that public streets are public. That seemed to push her over the edge. She started standing guard by her window, ready to rush out the moment someone parked in her spot. She'd bang on car windows, block people from getting out, and once even stood behind a car to prevent someone from backing out. The breaking point came about 2 weeks ago. I was getting ready for work when I heard shouting outside. She was having another meltdown at some poor delivery driver. She screamed at him about how she'd told people 100 times not to park there. The delivery driver tried to reason with her, saying he'd only be 5 minutes and was just dropping off a package. She told him that 5 minutes was too long and demanded he move immediately. She stormed back into her house. About an hour later, I saw her outside with a bucket. She was dumping something all over the street in front of her house. From my window, I couldn't see clearly what it was, but she spent a good 20 minutes spreading whatever it was around. The next morning, I found out what she'd done. My neighbor discovered his tire was flat. when he tried to leave for work. Then another neighbor found the same thing. When I looked closer at the street, I could see small metal objects scattered everywhere. This woman had actually dumped screws all over the public road. I called the city to report it, but they said they'd send someone out to investigate. Meanwhile, more people were discovering flat tires. The mail truck had to park 2 blocks away. Even the garbage collectors couldn't get close enough to collect trash from her side of the street. For about a week, her plan actually worked. Nobody could park in front of her house without risking their tires. She'd stand at her window with a smug smile watching people drive past her house looking for safe parking spots. Then yesterday happened. I was homesick from work when I heard a car pull up. It was a blue sedan and the driver parked right in front of Karen's house, apparently not seeing the scattered screws. I watched through my window as a woman in her 30s got out of the car. The moment her foot hit the ground, she screamed and fell backward against her car. Even from across the street, I could see blood on her shoe. That's when I realized this must be Karen's daughter. They had the same facial features and build. Karen came rushing out of her house, but instead of helping her daughter, she started yelling. She demanded to know what her daughter was doing there and said she'd told her not to come. The daughter, hopping on one foot in pain, asked her mother what was wrong with her and pointed out that there was a screw in her foot. She also noticed that all 4 of her tires were completely flat. The poor woman was trying to stay upright while blood seeped through her shoe. Karen coldly told her daughter that she shouldn't have parked there because she'd been telling everyone not to park in front of her house. The daughter reminded her mother that this was a public street and complained that Karen hadn't warned her about the screws. She was worried the screw had gone all the way through her shoe. I couldn't just watch anymore. I called 911 and then went outside to help. The daughter was crying both from pain and from shock at her mother's reaction. I told her the ambulance was on the way and advised her not to try pulling the screw out because that could make it worse. She thanked me and said she couldn't believe her own mother had done this. Karen wasn't done though. She kept ranting about how it was her daughter's fault for not listening, how the street belonged to her, and how everyone was working against her. When the paramedics arrived, they were horrified to see the state of the street. One of the paramedics asked who had scattered the screws everywhere. Karen proudly admitted that she had done it because it was her street and people needed to stop parking there. The paramedic just stared at her like she'd admitted to being an alien. While they worked on getting the screw out of the daughter's foot and loading her into the ambulance, the police arrived. The officers took one look at the deliberately scattered screws, the multiple cars with flat tires in the area, and Karen still ranting about her rights to the public street, and immediately understood the situation. One police officer told Karen that she was under arrest for criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, and vandalism of public property. Karen protested that they couldn't arrest her because she was protecting her property. The officer explained that this wasn't her property but a public street, and that she had endangered multiple people with her actions. They handcuffed her while she was still screaming about how unfair everyone was being to her. Her own daughter, sitting in the back of the ambulance with her bandaged foot, just shook her head. The city crew came out that afternoon and spent hours cleaning up all the screws. They said they'd never seen anything like it before. Karen's daughter had to get several stitches and a tetanus shot, but thankfully, the screw didn't cause permanent damage. Karen spent the night in jail and now has court dates coming up. Her daughter told the neighbor that she's cutting contact with her mother until she gets serious mental health help. Since Karen's stunt damaged multiple vehicles and city property, she's facing some hefty fines and possibly having to pay for everyone's tire replacements. The street is peaceful again, and people can park wherever they find a legal spot. My life was pretty simple before all this started. I wake up around 7 a.m., make some coffee, cook myself a decent breakfast, then start my workday. Nothing fancy, but it worked for me. 2 months ago, everything changed when my sister showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and her kids in tow. She'd just gotten out of what she called the worst relationship of her life. From what little she told me, her ex was controlling and emotionally abusive. She looked completely drained when she asked if she could stay with me for a while until she got back on her feet. Of course, I said yes. She's my sister, and those kids needed a stable place to be. The first week went okay. My sister was clearly exhausted and spent most of her time sleeping or just sitting on the couch staring at nothing. I figured she needed time to process everything she'd been through. Her 7-year-old son and 4-year-old daughter were good kids, just confused about the whole situation. I tried to keep things normal for them. That's when I noticed my sister's sleep schedule was completely messed up. She'd go to bed around 3 a.m. and not wake up until well past noon. Some days she didn't get up until 1 p.m. At first, I thought it was just temporary. Maybe her body was catching up on all the sleep she lost during the stress of her bad relationship. But weeks went by and this wasn't changing. And here's the thing, those kids still needed to eat breakfast. So I started making extra whenever I cooked for myself. If I made scrambled eggs and toast, I'd make enough for 3. If I felt like having oatmeal, I'd make a big pot. The kids seemed grateful, and I didn't mind helping out. This routine worked fine until last week. I woke up craving huevos rancheros, fried eggs on tortillas with salsa and cheese. I was in a good mood, humming while I cooked, when the kids came downstairs rubbing their eyes. My nephew asked what the smell was, and I told him I was making huevos rancheros and offered them some. Both kids immediately made disgusted faces and said it looked gross. They complained that they didn't want that and asked me to make something else instead. I looked at these two little faces staring up at me expectantly. They'd been through enough upheaval already, and I didn't want to be another source of stress. I offered to make pancakes instead, and both kids got excited and said yes. So I put my breakfast aside and made them pancakes from scratch. They were happy, I felt good about helping, and I figured it was just a one-time thing. The next morning I decided on breakfast potatoes with scrambled eggs. Simple, kid-friendly food. But when I started plating it up, here we go again. My niece wrinkled her nose and said she didn't want potatoes. My nephew chimed in agreeing and asked if I could make something different. I felt a little annoyed but pushed it down. These kids had been through a lot. I made them cereal and toast instead, while my perfectly good breakfast got cold. The third morning was the breaking point. I'd made French toast, literally one of the most kid-friendly breakfasts you can think of. But sure enough, my nephew announced that they didn't like French toast, and my niece asked if I could make waffles instead. That's when I realized I created little monsters. These kids now expected me to be their personal short-order cook every morning while their mother slept until the afternoon. I told them I was done making 2 different meals every morning. I explained that this was what I was having for breakfast, and if they didn't want it, they could go wake up their mom and ask her to cook for them. My nephew protested that she was sleeping. I told him that meant he'd have to wake her up then. Both kids trudged upstairs. I could hear them knocking on their mother's bedroom door, talking to her through it. After a few minutes, they came back down looking disappointed. My niece told me that their mom said she was too tired and to ask me instead. I told them that what I was making was what was available, and they could take it or leave it. They both sat there pouting while I ate my French toast. Eventually, they ate some cereal they poured themselves. I thought maybe this would be a wake-up call for my sister, but she still didn't come downstairs until after 1 p.m. The moment she walked into the kitchen, both kids ran to her. My nephew complained that I had refused to feed them that morning. My niece added that I had made gross food and wouldn't make them anything else. My sister whipped around to face me with this look of pure rage. I could tell she'd worked herself up while lying in bed, probably imagining the worst. She started yelling about how serious this was and that these were children who needed to eat at normal times, not whenever I felt like getting around to it. I tried to explain that I've been feeding them every morning for weeks while she slept until the afternoon. She cut me off and said that wasn't the point. She accused me of being cruel for refusing to feed kids just because they didn't like what I was making. She demanded to know what kind of person does that to children. She was really getting going now, her voice getting louder and more shrill. She went on about how I was supposed to be helping them, not making everything harder. She claimed that these kids had been through enough without me adding to their problems. She said she couldn't believe I'd be so selfish and cruel to children. I could feel my temper rising. I'd been bending over backward to help her and her kids for 2 months, and this is the thanks I get. Then she delivered what was clearly meant to be the final blow. She said that maybe this was all a mistake and maybe they should just leave if I couldn't handle having them there. That last comment was clearly meant to manipulate me into apologizing and backing down, but I was done being the doormat. I told her that I knew she was going through a rough time and that I knew she was depressed, but I said she needed to wake up and take care of her kids instead of expecting me to do it for her. The kitchen went completely silent. My sister's mouth actually fell open like she couldn't believe I'd said that. The kids looked back and forth between us, sensing the tension. My sister opened and closed her mouth a few times like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Finally, she just turned around and walked back upstairs without another word. That was 3 days ago. She's been giving me the silent treatment ever since, coming downstairs only when she absolutely has to and avoiding eye contact. The kids keep looking at me like they're waiting for me to apologize to their mom, but I'm not going to. Here's what really gets me. She's clearly expecting me to be the one to fix this. She thinks if she pouts long enough, I'll cave and say I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry. I said what needed to be said. This morning was actually kind of funny. I made myself scrambled eggs and toast like usual. The kids came down and just stared at the food for a minute. Then, without saying a word, they each took a plate and ate what I'd made. No complaints, no demands for something different. Apparently, they figured out pretty quickly that the free breakfast buffet was over. My sister finally came downstairs around noon and saw the kids had eaten. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but I just smiled and went back to my computer. The ball's in her court now. I've given her a roof over her head, helped with her kids, and asked for nothing in return. The least she can do is act like a parent instead of another dependent I have to take care of. If she doesn't like that arrangement, she knows where the door is. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.